So, Horror Mayhem has started. So, as I've intimated in previous live streams or videos, shorts and stuff, I'm going to try and do this as a vlog. So, this is the first little bit of me talking to you about what I've read for Horror Mayhem. Let's go. So, it's the first week of Horror Mayhem, and my plan is to go with the prompt, possibly after a few days. So maybe on the 3rd, I'll start looking at the local prompt, because I want to just start off with a couple of stories that are just more random horror stories. So I'm actually going to start with Edgar Allen Poe, and then I'm going to look at local stuff. So I've got, I think it's Rob Uletsky, I think his name is. I've got a book by him that I'm going through, and another guy, Damon L Wakes. They're both local authors, but also Neil Gaiman is a local author, so that's pretty cool. So I'm going to look through my anthologies, collections of Neil Gaiman, and maybe some other anthologies that feature Neil Gaiman, and read him as a local author. And I might, if I can get to it, show you The Ocean at the End of the Lane, which is a road that Neil Gaiman opened a few years back, as he's a local boy. So the first thing that has occurred this month, before I got stuck into stories, was this is a local author, Damon L Wakes, and I had 2 of his flash fiction books, and I thought some of that might be horror, but no, it's not. Yeah, some of it's interesting. I think because it's flash fiction, some of the challenges are like, write a story with 85 words that do this, or 150 words that do this. So they're obviously often very, very slight stories. But you could see that there's a great energy to them. And there was one I read earlier that made me laugh out loud. So that was really cool. But yeah, they're not horror. So local author, but I'm going to go to Rob Uletsky. When I find the book, I'll tell you how it's pronounced. But I'm going to find that one. But I'll be reading Edgar Allen Poe first anyway. But anyway, yeah, just thought I'd add that I did do some exploring with Damon Wakes, but it's not horror. So the first story I read for Horror Mayhem, from Tales of Mystery and Imagination by Edgar Allen Poe, was William Wilson. So I heard about this story. I mean, I've had this book for a long time anyway, and I've read it before, but I hadn't read this one for ages. I hadn't read any of them for a while, actually. But I knew about this one because it had been mentioned in The Outsider by Stephen King. He talked about this story, so I read it. Prose full of purple prose. If you wrote like that now, you'd be laughed out of the room. But anyway, it's characteristic of the way he writes. So, like, you know, elaborately ornate words that are trying to tell you something. So it kind of gets in the way of the narrative flow a bit, but it was good, and obviously very important. This was written. When was it written? Hold on. It was written in 1839. It was written, so long time ago. So it's quite cool to start with. Very important author, William Wilson. So it's about a doppelganger. I won't tell you too much, although it was a very short story. But yeah, that's what the premise is. It's about a doppelganger. Nice. Okay, so the next story has happened. Story number 2 in this Horror Mayhem. And I've gone with a green cover. So this covers the PAX prompt, because I really wanted to make sure I found the green cover, which is really cool. So this is the best new horror number 2. And I was looking for a Neil Gaiman story, and really I wanted to keep going, so I'm going to go up in the loft in a minute and find the Neil Gaiman stuff. But in the meantime, I've found a story in here by Newman, who's his mate. So I thought, okay, I'll go with his mate. And funnily enough, Neil Gaiman's actually mentioned as a character in this story. So the story is called The Original Dr. Shade. It's a really interesting, kind of haunting kind of story, like a comic book character haunting the present day, well, like a historical comic book character that gets brought back and is actually haunting the printing press. And it's interesting. There's loads of it's in a way the horror in this story is the fascist stuff, the right wing stuff that Kim Newman's pointing out in this sort of extreme exaggeration of a Thatcherite Britain in the 80s. Really interesting, and kind of a little bit funny, a little bit disturbing, a little bit strong. There's some words in there that are really offensive because of the nature of the sort of fascist politics that he's pointing out. But yeah, interesting Kim Newman story. The original Dr. Shade, that's what it's called, the original Dr. Shade, in here with an appearance by Neil Gaiman, a local author. Okay, so now we've got the next bit of my reading from Horror Mayhem and Neil Gaiman. So I've got the Neil Gaiman stuff down, and I started with a book called Fairy Tales. So this is a collection edited by Stephen Jones, with nice illustrations by Alan Lee. You may know Alan Lee from the Lord of the Rings stuff. And it came out in 2013, and it's kind of modern reworkings or meditations on fairy tales kind of thing. And Stephen Jones describes this as a horror book. But the story I read is horrific, but it's very beautiful in its language. So it's got a kind of a bit of an old-fashioned vibe to it. So it's a Neil Gaiman story called Down to a Sunless Sea. It's very short, but it's very evocative. I thought it was really good. And the prose did sing to me in a way that sometimes very ornate prose doesn't sing to me. But yeah, it did actually. I thought it was really nicely written. And it ticks off the cannibalism square. And it does it in a very beautiful way. So yeah, Down to a Sunless Sea, I read from the Fairy Tales collection. And then I got Smoke and Mirrors down, which is a really good collection, and I haven't read it in years. This is one I bought this the day that I met him. So I asked him to sign for my daughter, and since then, she said I can have it. So, okay. But anyway, that was signed for Jess, and she said, keep writing. I told him that she wrote, at the time she was writing little bits and pieces. So he wrote, keep writing and dreaming. It's like he said, keep writing, and he was like, oh, and dreaming. Don't forget to dream, Jess. So yeah, it was a lovely conversation. I've spoken about it before. It was really awesome. Anyway, so this is Smoke and Mirrors. So this came out in 1999. The first thing I read was a poem in there called The Vampire Sestina, and I really liked it. So it's a 2-page poem, and it's literally telling the vampire's lifestyle, if you like, through poetic methods, and it's really nice. So Vampire Sestina was really good. And then I reread a story that I do remember, but I thought I'd reread it again, and it does get talked about a lot. A lot of Neil Gaiman fans talk about it, and that's his reversal, if you like, with some extras of the Snow White story. So a bit of folktale stuff going on here, and that's called Snow Glass Apples. And it's worth reading, actually, because he doesn't just reverse it. It's quite nasty as well. So, yeah, it's interesting. So that was really cool. So it's nice to read that again. So Snow Glass Apples, a reworking and an ugly version of the Snow White story. I tell you what, I will read. I'll finish this little bit with. There's an interview with him at the end. And it's a good interview, some cool questions, but one of the questions is, given the title Smoke and Mirrors, do you feel short stories can be like magic tricks? And his response is, I think a good short story is a magic trick, yes. And that's one reason why I love reading books on magic, because sometimes you realise that the trick is very small, but the effect is huge. In Smoke and Mirrors, there are definitely stories where I just wanted to try to essentially do a magic trick. It's Snow White, but I'm going to show it to you in a mirror so you've never seen it like this before. And you'll never be able to think about it in the same way ever again. Okay, so I'm now looking at Fragile Things, 2006 collection of Neil Gaiman stories. Very, very short. Well, a lot of them are very short. But I read a story called Feeders and Eaters, and it features the consumption of human flesh. It wasn't particularly spooky or scary or creepy, but it was, well, a little bit creepy actually, but it was definitely horrific. But I liked it, it was good. I like the way he writes, it's got to be said. So yeah, Feeders and Eaters from the 2006 collection, Fragile Things. So this is Canoe Lake. Lovely area, it's nice for tourists, but it's also nice for people who live down here. So this is right on the beach prom, but here you've got a little main road here. So this leads to the beach, and there's a little bus stop there. And then here, this little tiny road here. So just going from here, little tiny road, and in 2013, it was this unnamed road. It was named the ocean at the end of the lane, and at the end of the lane is the ocean, because here, as I said, there's Canoe Lake there. Here. It's the end of the lane. Here, and that's the ocean, that's the other way. And so one last little bit for the end of the first week of Horror Mayhem, and it's really cool to finish with a story by Arthur Conan Doyle. So Arthur Conan Doyle lived in Southsea from 1882 to 1890, and I thought it'd be nice to look up whether I could find out what he wrote while he was living in Southsea. So he lived literally 15, 20 minutes walk away from where I live now. So very much a local author for a while. So I had a look to see if I can find something, and I found a story called Selecting a Ghost, and I managed to get a PDF of it. And it's on his website, so I'll his website, like he's like he created the website, you know what I mean. I'm going to put a link in the description where I found it, because there's other stuff on there. It's really interesting. So if you're interested in Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, have a look at that stuff. So yeah, Portsmouth has got some interesting connections with obviously Charles Dickens and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and obviously I've been talking about Neil Gaiman anyway, but. Yeah, Selecting Ghosts. It was really interesting. A really good story. It was the favourite one I've read this week. So it was nice that I started the week with Edgar Allen Poe. Didn't really like the story that much, but it was good to read it, and I was glad I read it. This one, again from the 1800s, but I really liked it, and definitely a more interesting read, I think. Definitely recommend it. It's a ghost story, or is it? But there's a lot of humour in it, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it. I've got a cider here because I'm about to play, so in about 20 minutes we start our first set. So we're playing in this pub here, the Rope Makers in Bridport. It's a lovely place, and we always like playing here, so we'll see what happens. But I wanted to finish this week's first vlog with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and hopefully I have put up some images of the website where you can read the story. And definitely recommend it. It was really good. So it was a nice end to the week, but I've got a couple of days left in the week, so I'm going to try and get like a novel started. So I feel like I've gone through the prompts for this first week, and next week obviously is the theme of film related stories, so I look forward to that. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. Stay curious, everybody.
picture of what it's like to